Denver's number one for hip hop and R&B. This is the Beat of CT. I'm Jenny Boom Boom, your host, and DJ Michi's here.
Hey, what's up? What's up?
All right, and today we have Lisa Jensen here. She's a recovery coach in private practice, working with people that struggle with addictions and their families. Hi, Lisa. How are you?
Hi, I'm well, thanks. How are you?
It's so nice to see you again. I know that in the past we've done some things together. Lisa actually threw this really beautiful festival last year, and she had a lot of families dealing with, or struggling with addiction come to this festival, and I just really loved being there. So I hope that you'll invite me again whenever we're able to have a festival again.
As soon as we are.
Yeah. Okay, so Michi, I know you want to start with the first question today.
Yeah, so Lisa, I just want to know, what is addiction? Some people say it's a choice. Some people say it's a disease. What is your interpretation of it?
So, not my interpretation, but the DSM-5, which is what psychologists or, therapists go by, has it listed as a behavioral health disorder. We call it substance use disorder. And people get confused because, yes, initially you have to choose to try a substance, which most people do, drink alcohol at least. But not everybody who chooses to drink alcohol becomes addicted to alcohol.
So wait, hold on a second,
addiction is,
because I need to know, honestly, I need to know, and I'm not trying to be funny here, because sometimes I analyze myself and I'm like, well, during this quarantine, I've been having at least a glass of wine every night.
Right.
Where normally I would save it for the weekends.
Totally within the norm. That's completely within the norm. For a woman, they say an average of 2 drinks a night or 14 in a week.
Oh my God, so I'm okay.
You are doing fine. Man, it's about 3. And then we have other things. And not everybody who drinks a little in excess, could be, they could have a party and drink a little extra and feel good. Not everybody like that is a problem drinker, or not everybody like that has an addiction.
So if you know that, in your family, like my father was a very, very serious alcoholic, and his father before him. Okay. So if you know that, are you more likely to become an alcoholic or drug user if there is addiction in your family already?
You do have, it's something against you. If you have that, if it runs in your family, it doesn't mean that you definitely will be, because addiction, substance use disorder is, we call it a biophysical psychosocial disorder. I mean, it has a lot of components to it. So there is a biological component for some people. Some people will have that inherited trait. But there's also, it's a psychological thing for people where they're drinking or using a substance to feel better. There's also a social component to it. If they're a little anxious, they use it to relax, and then sometimes that gets out of hand. It's very complex, and but it becomes very apparent rather quickly for most people if it is an actual issue.
So does drinking alcohol normally lead to I'm sorry, I'm asking a lot of personal questions here. Does drinking alcohol normally lead to more, more things like maybe gateway drugs, and is there such a thing as a gateway drug?
People ask that question a lot, and some people will say adamantly there is a gateway drug, and other people say there absolutely isn't. And I look at it, this is my my personal view, is that the gateway could be somebody who, their kid, a lot of kids in high school, right? They smoke a little weed, or college. But the gateway might be because they already have a connection in the world where they can get other things. Because some kids will smoke weed and they're done with it. Other kids will drink and they're done with it. We sort of figure that most adolescents are going to experiment to some degree. And we try to make sure, as responsible adults, as their parents, their aunts, uncles, cousins, or as professionals, that they would choose a harm reduction, meaning that they would use the substance in a safe place, meaning that they drink at home, or if they're at a bar, especially, if they're of age, if they're at a bar, that they would not drive if they were drinking to excess. If there's a designated driver, they use Uber. But some people will quickly have, they feel better when they use a substance. So that's more what pulls them in. And say some people use to feel good, and some people use to feel better. If somebody's using to feel better, that's where that difference is. And most people who have a substance use disorder have a co-occurring disorder, such as depression, anxiety. Trauma is a huge thing, whether it's PTSD or a recent trauma. Some people have bipolar disorder, and the one that shocks everybody is ADHD. Those are very commonly co-occurring disorders with substance use disorder. So we hear the term self-medicating, and that's one of them. Yeah.
Wow. So what is a recovery coach?
Okay. A recovery coach is me. So I am a professional. I have been trained to do what I do, and I can help somebody who is struggling themselves, trying to decide if they do indeed have a substance use disorder and need a diagnosis with a therapist, or to help them to get the connections that they need, or to help them get into a detox program or a recovery program. I also help people who've been in a residential rehab when they come out, to continue their care, to make sure that they're staying with their program. I can do anything from, helping them to find those resources, supporting them with weekly visits, phone calls, texts, driving them to and from their appointments or their meetings, just that check-in, helping their families to learn how to speak to them, because, you want to shake somebody and say, well, just don't do it anymore. You have to just change your mind. And it's more than that. It's more than that, because of what addiction does to the brain.
So when you're like, dealing with folks that might have addiction issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know you just kind of told us the difference between what you consider might be a problem and not a problem. But how does someone know, like how do you know that someone might really need your help?
That might need my help, or
just, I'm talking in general.
Are you talking as a loved one or as a professional?
A loved one.
As a loved one. Well, most loved ones are the first ones to know because they see a change in behavior. They see a consistent pattern. This, spouse or child that has a certain personality has suddenly changed. But there are, we do use some self-diagnostic tools to help people just run through, and get a better idea to help them to understand, or to help the parent. But usually the person who contacts me, sometimes I get contacted through some of the nonprofits that I help out. And sometimes it's, a friend of a friend, or somebody who's already used my services, word of mouth.
So, I'm just asking because, like, when my kids, I have older kids, sometimes they take a little walk on Easter without me. And everybody's going for the walk. And only they're allowed to go. Like, the parents can't go and the young kids can't go. So I know what's going on. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So, yeah. So, and at first, when those things started happening, when they were in their teens, I could get very, 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 very nervous and upset, and we'd fight all the time and stuff. Now it's kind of like, I kind of accept it. So am I enabling, or am I just saying, okay, it's okay that they're socially going for their walk?
So, I hate the word enable.
Okay. I'm sorry. All right.
No, you don't have to apologize. That's a personal thing, because I feel that we love our people, our significant others, our children, our loved ones, the best way that we know at a given time. So that being said, there are certain things, it depends on what it is. If you know that your kid is going off for a walk to meet their dealer and shoot heroin, then yeah, you need to intervene.
Now that's a problem. Right. Okay.
Right. If they're going off to smoke medicinal cannabis or, because you can get it legally now, that's a completely different story, isn't it?
Right.
So, and it has to do with the other things that are happening in their lives. How is this affecting them? If it's affecting them that on the weekends they go for a walk with their friends and they smoke, that's one thing. But if it's affecting them that they can't perform at a job, at school, at home, did you see these changes in a person? Then that's more of a flag.
Okay.
And also, I say medicinal cannabis because it is used as a medication. And there are some people who use medicinal cannabis as a step down even from something like heroin. And so, if you compare those two things, obviously one is harm reduction, isn't it? It's
Right.
a lot less harm using cannabis than using heroin. People don't overdose from cannabis. They overdose from heroin. They overdose from meth. They overdose from crack cocaine. They overdose, or, they have really bad episodes. Now, young kids can have problems with cannabis because their brains aren't fully developed. And if the cannabis is not through a dispensary, it could have a high level of THC that some kids have had maybe a psychotic episode from. Usually they already have other issues if that happens, but I don't know that for a fact. I'm not a doctor.
So do you want me to tell you my history? Michi knows this story. I was like 19. I was in my apartment and like my cousins come over and they want to all get high. So I'm like, okay, yeah, let's smoke a blunt. And so I get high and all of a sudden I see a checkerboard in front of my face and it didn't leave for like 12 hours.
That wasn't just cannabis.
That was wet, right?
Yeah.
Which is embalming fluid that they slipped in there. I don't think they slipped in there, but they got really freaked out because I called my mom and they left me.
Oh no.
Anyway,
but like I said, young people experiment. We know that. And so we try to keep it within a harm reduction, and we have to have, responsible adults that are out there checking in and knowing what's going on.
Mm.
So
And I'm sorry, go ahead, Meech. Go ahead. Sorry.
We're just talking about just the whole experimenting thing. Is there a link just with, like, I've heard people say, they've done a certain type of drug or a certain type of thing and they feel like they're tolerant to it. So that's why they made that choice to possibly do something else. Like, is there like a specific like mental type of link to that, to why people do that or why people think that?
I think exactly what they told you. When the substance they're using, you do build up a tolerance to things.
Mm-hmm.
So when the substance that they're using doesn't give them that desired effect, they try something else. Those are people who are trying to feel better.
Mm. Okay.
And the case in point with the whole opioid epidemic, people are using opioids, prescribed opioids a lot of times, using them, and then switch to heroin because it's cheaper when they can't get their prescription paid for by their insurance any longer. But then fentanyl came in, and we hear about fentanyl and people are overdosing because of it. But there are some people who've built up such a tolerance to the opioids that they look for the dealer who has fentanyl in there. And most heroin now does have fentanyl, but they look for that just so they're not sick, because when they don't use, they become sick. We call it dope sick.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I've had a personal experience with a family member that, they had a health issue and they had surgery and then they were addicted for a very long time. And a lot of us, we didn't know.
That's a huge problem. And that is from, that starts with the big pharma. I'm just going to say it. If you need to cut it, you can. But Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family had this very aggressive marketing campaign back in the mid-90s, pushing their drugs, saying it wasn't addictive, and pushing doctors to use these drugs for chronic pain, for simple pain, and giving higher doses and for longer periods of time. which resulted in a lot of people having addictions. And it goes further than that, where we had, drug distributors bringing them to what we call pill mills, what they used to say pain management clinics, which were effectively just selling prescriptions. They were just selling prescriptions. People would be lined up for a mile outside some of these places, all hours of the day and night. Clearly, it was not a medical practice. And so what happened is, the person who's getting them through the regular doctor and who really believes that it's for their pain, a lot of times cancer patients, because some cancers, are not terminal and we're using them continuously, and they become physically dependent upon these and that addiction, and then that drives their brain to think that they need this substance. So, it's this huge problem that we have, where so many pills were flooded into the streets, and then people started using them. When the DEA did go and shut down some of these, suddenly that supply is gone, and then people started using heroin and fentanyl, and then all of the overdoses.
Yeah. So that's what happened in my situation. And, he's been clean now for 2 years, but you never know what's going to happen. We're just taking everything one day at a time. But, at the time I didn't know what was happening. So I would get a phone call like, hey, I need money for this book for college. Can you send me $400? And I'm like, $400 for a book? Then finally, that person came to me and opened up and said, I'm afraid I'm going to die.
Yes.
But he's still on Suboxone now.
And that is between him and his prescriber and whatever therapists that they work with, how long that goes. Some people stay on it longer than others, but Suboxone is a maintenance drug. We use it for treatment, because if somebody is feeling dope sick, as we call it, they can't focus on their recovery. They can't go through the therapies, the treatment that they need. So that helps to get them. We call it medication-assisted therapy, and Suboxone is buprenorphine is the scientific name. We also methadone is another one, and there's a third one called Vivitrol, which is naltrexone.
So, but I don't think people really understand, especially young people, and I want to get the word out right now that when you enter into using these types of substances, when you become an opioid or heroin addict, it physically and not only mentally changes you, it physically changes you as well.
Yes, it absolutely does.
So can you tell me some of the ways that these drugs change you physically?
Well, the first thing is that your body depends upon this. And the first thing when you're using opioids, like things like becoming constipated is a common side effect from an opioid drug. And what happens is when you don't use it, then everything, then you have the opposite problems, diarrhea, you have shakes and fever and, leg and like muscle cramps. And there's also the itch, they call it, where you'll notice a parent or a sibling might notice that suddenly they're picking, like they have scabs on their face. They look like they have a lot of acne on their face, their arms, wherever else that they actually tend to. It seems like a nervous thing, but it's this, like they feel like something's crawling on their skin. So they're kind of picking at it.
Yeah. And like my family member moves his jaw a lot, back and forth, constantly moving his jaw.
Right.
Yeah.
So you see those different changes, and those are things that parents need to look for. There's also physical evidence of use. Little tiny elastics that people keep thinking are from braces. Those are used to wrap the packages, the bundles of heroin. These come in little tiny, almost like a wax paper, little tiny envelope, and there may be 10 of them bundled together. If they're injecting it, there's needle caps all over the place usually, and people mistaken them for pen caps or for electrical. If their child works or their spouse works with electrical, they think that they're caps for those things. There's I recommend, if you're a parent and you suspect, to go right in that bedroom and look.
Right.
I recommend it, because that's where you're going to find out what's what. And look inside little containers and backpacks and, water bottles. they're very clever. They're very clever. Books, they cut the inside of a book out, hide stuff in there, but inevitably they become sloppy and leave traces.
Right.
So as far as like, if you do go into your child's room and you do find something, how do you confront your child?
It's a very good question. And I think it depends on the individuals. If you're concerned that your child is violent, because sometimes people who are using can be violent outside of, then I would recommend seeking some help to do so. But, you know, if you remove what they have, they're going to know that you know. That's the first step. I recommend disposing of it properly. There are activated charcoal packets that you can get. If anybody really wants one, one of the groups I work with is called Roadway of Hope CT, and they will be happy to share theirs with you. You can probably get them through your local health department as well. A lot of them have them, and you could just put the drug in there, seal it up, shake it up, and it just breaks it down so that you would not be able to, it's not recognizable, and nobody can use it still. If you don't have that, you can also put in a Ziploc baggie, pour some bleach in it, shake it up a whole heck of a lot, and throw it in the garbage.
So, you know, the person though is going to deny it.
You'd be surprised. Sometimes, I mean, the bottom line is, you know, at that point, and they know that, you know, even if they deny it. I have a personal story. When we were growing up, my brother made a homemade bong and left it in my dad's car. And my dad takes it out and he's upset about this. And he says to my mother, "Do you know what this is?" And she says, I don't know. It looks like an oxygen mask. Because he was a lifeguard and he used the oxygen, that part, and the tubing and this round plastic container from candy or something. And he says, "Oh, it's one of those water pipes." And my mom's like, "Well, how do you know what it is?" She starts questioning him left and right. And so he's getting angry and he starts confronting my brother. And my brother says, like, "It's not mine. You were the one in my car." "I don't know. It's not mine. It's not mine. It's not mine." My father's getting angrier and angrier, red in the face, you know, veins popping out. And he says, "Well, you know what? It's garbage." And my brother looks at him deadpan and says, "It's okay. It didn't work anyway."
So there we go. He told on himself.
But well, he knew at that point. It didn't matter. But when somebody is seriously involved, you know, oftentimes they recognize that they do not have it in control like they thought they would. Yeah. And they might start leaving things around because they want you to find it.
Oh, okay.
They want the help. So I would say at that point, you know, it's okay to say, you know, "I found this in your room. Do you want to explain?" And let them talk. Let them do the talking. Not confronting with, you know, "We're going to have an intervention," and yelling at them and telling them why they're wrong and all of those things. Those push people away further. What we want to do is we want to give them that space to be able to share, and they may or may not. But we want to get to, you know, the ultimate goal with all of this would be to get to what their motivation would be to stop using. So if you push it at them and tell them they have to stop using, I don't know about you, but as soon as somebody says to me, "You can't," are you not thinking of why you should or why you want to?
Right.
You know, like you can't go out right now. You can't go to this store or that store. I don't even go to half of those stores, but you start thinking, "Boy, you know, it'd be fun to just go and walk around there." Right. You know, silly things, but especially children, right? And when somebody is using, their brain isn't thinking clearly. So if you put somebody on the defensive, they become defensive.
Right.
So we're trying to open up that space and get to what it is that would cause them. So what types of things would cause somebody to want to go into recovery or to want to stop using? You know, it might be the fact that they've spent so much money, or that they don't have the same friends they used to have. They don't have any friends. They're spending their days just trying to find their next fix sometimes, and trying to, you know, stealing money from mom's purse or from their, you know, their husband's wallet, or really bad cases, people are selling things that belong to their children. They're putting them in hock to support their habit, or their addiction, I should say, not a habit. A habit is a different thing. So, we want to get to those things. We want to have a real conversation. We don't want to. So that might be a point where a parent might reach out to me because they don't know what to do, or because, it's a different person. It's not mom and dad who've told you all your life what you can and can't do.
Right. So so you go into the home, and like, how does it work?
Yeah. So if a person contacts me, I will agree to work with them. If it's a parent, they might bring me in to their home and have a conversation. We usually have a phone conversation at first, and then, arrange for a meeting. Sometimes, like I said, I might be contacted by a rehab to work with one of their clients who's leaving a residential situation. Sorry.
That's okay.
So yeah, and so then I would go and I would speak with the person involved. Sometimes I work directly with the clients, with the afflicted individual. Other times I only work with the family members, and that depends on the situation. Okay. Sometimes the person who is struggling doesn't want to deal with their addiction, so then it's time to help the loved ones to sort out their feelings and how they're going to work with this, and help them to get services that they might need. And other times, you could have one coach working with the afflicted individual, another coach working with the family member, or you can work with both of them.
Okay.
In the situation.
Misha, you had a question? Sorry.
Yeah. So, just to talk about struggle again, with what's going on now with, the pandemic and, the COVID, how's like the current situation affecting the people that are struggling?
It really is. I've noticed an uptake, in the number of people. I have people who are reaching out again.
Yeah.
Some people who were, maybe in early recovery are struggling because of the isolation. Right. That's a big thing for people who are struggling with substances, is isolation. Some of it is they isolate themselves, but now they don't, feeling like they need to reach out. Can you explain that to me? I'm sorry, because I feel like maybe for people with addiction problems, being social would be more of a problem because of the environment, the people around you. Right. Well, but remember, some people who are, if you're in active addiction, see, there's differences. There's active addiction. You're being social with the people that you use with sometimes, but also even people who are in active addiction, they still have family and hopefully some friends
that they're leaning on,
still associated with. And then people who are trying to get into recovery need that support. People who are in early recovery, which means, they haven't been using their substance, but they're just starting this recovery journey. And then there are other people who haven't used in a while and who are struggling because they're feeling that isolation, which is what they felt when they were using. And now that they haven't been, they've been more social. I think a lot of people are struggling with this lack of social interaction. Yeah. But, people need to know that there still are services. There still are physical, like for residential rehabs, there's detox and residential rehabs that are still open and taking people in. There are therapists and recovery specialists who will meet with you. Some of them do telehealth. Some will meet with you face-to-face because it is an essential, service. And we do have different online, there are a lot of meetings online. There's one on Wednesday nights. Again, that's with Roadway of Hope, CT. That's a family support. And then the movement, THE is capitalized, movement. They have a Tuesday and a Thursday posting for family support. There are AA, NA, Refuge Recovery, Smart Recovery. There's a ton of those that support the person. They're online though. So some people don't like those as much, like a Zoom meeting like we're having now. And then there are places that have I know there's a rehab called Mountainside out in Canaan, Connecticut, and they even have a fitness, like an exercise online Zoom. I think it's Zoom. It's online exercise for recovery, and so there's a lot of those kinds of supports that weren't out there then. There were a few that were online, but a lot of them, most people prefer to be face-to-face for meetings. But now there's a plethora of online support that people can get. And like I mentioned, telehealth, which some doctors, regular PCs, use, but also therapists and psychotherapists are using, it would be like this, a face-to-face online meeting.
I think that's really great to know.
Yeah.
Because maybe while folks are sitting at home, they might think, you know what, maybe I do have some sort of issue. Maybe I do need to maybe just attend one of these online meetings, see what it's like, and maybe I'll really like it.
Right. And I think that is a good way. You don't have to have your video on if you don't want to, so people can still be anonymous if they really wanted to. People can go on and just listen.
I like that.
There are options.
Yeah. Wow, Lisa, I learned so much today.
Yeah, me too.
No, seriously. So if say we needed to somehow get in touch with you, I'm thinking I need Lisa to help me out with this family situation, or I have a question about this. How do we get in touch with you, Lisa?
So you have my phone number.
I do have your phone number, but I'm saying I don't know if you want me to give that out to everybody.
So yeah, that is my work phone number.
Oh,
so
okay.
That is okay. Also on Facebook, I have a page that's called Progressive Addiction Recovery.
Okay.
You can find me through the Roadway of Hope CT. That's another way. I'm also connected with a few other organizations. Is it okay to give a shout out for a couple of those?
Oh, absolutely. Please, please okay. Tell us all the organizations.
Okay. So, and a big one that's helping right now, Mark Jenkins with the Greater Hartford Harm Reduction. He actually has a mobile home, a RV that is suited up to help people. Like they can come on, they can get tested, they can have something to eat, it's amazing what he does. That's out of Hartford.
That's great.
Yeah. So I mentioned the movement. Quiet Corner Cares is out in the northeastern part of Connecticut, where we have a lot of issues. The woman who started that, Bridget, she is opening the first women's sober living home out in that area.
Oh, I love that.
And that's in our daughter's memory, her daughter Kasha's memory. Smile Anyway in Brantford, that's another really good resource. Today I Matter is out of, I'm going to get this confused, it's like North Central.
Okay.
I say Weathersfield, but I might be wrong. John Lally, he has a memorial poster project, which is both awe-inspiring and really sad. It's these giant posters of people who've passed from.
Yeah, I saw that when we went to the family festival, and Michi, it's mind-blowing.
Really?
How many people have died from addiction?
Wow.
And
pictures and
a small portion of the people.
Yeah, just a portion of the people. But I mean, how many of those posters did you guys set up that day?
I'm trying to think. I think he has a total of, it was like about 435 at the time.
Wow.
Yeah, and they have their pictures and their names on it,
and like 3 words to describe them that their their loved one has used to describe them, and 2 of those posters are a young woman and her significant other, and they have a daughter, and and the little daughter told me her story that and she was about 8 when she told me that in 1 week her mom died, her dad died, and she had her 6th birthday all in the same week. Those are the reasons behind why people do what they do to help and to change this. Could you imagine having an 8-year-old? When I was 8, I was, I don't know, playing with dolls and going to brownies, I had no concept of those things that were going on around me. And they were going on around me. By the time I was 10, my grandmother died from cirrhosis of the liver, which my family was smart enough to tell me when I was old enough to understand, to explain. But, I was sheltered from that. I didn't have to deal with, it was my grandmother. She was sick and she died. It was sad. But this little girl lost both of her parents the week that she turned 6 years old. And that's her grandmother, who's now raising her, is the one that I told you about that has the Quiet Corner Cares. I mention Smile Anyway, and Way of the Heart Festival. That is born from the loss of my friend's best friend and cousin. And it is music and meditation and workshops, and it's a really nice way to celebrate his life and to help people who are in recovery to connect.
Lisa, you're the best.
Thank you.
So glad to have you on today. Seriously. I mean, we learned so much. And Michi, do you have any other questions before we go? Or has she answered just about everything?
Yes. Yeah. Learned so much today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And like I said, if anybody needs help, to feel free to reach out. If they just want to be connected to some online services, or if they want to talk, it's always free to just have a phone call or a text. So
yeah. And once again, what is your Facebook page?
Progressive Addiction Recovery.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you.
All right. It's at 937. Lisa, you're awesome. We'll be calling you again in a couple months.
Thanks, Jenny. Oh, there's plenty going on. So
yeah.
Hopefully we'll have some more events that'll be able to be happening.
That would be amazing.
Right?
Can you also just send me some more folks that might want to get on and talk with us?
I absolutely will.
Yeah.
I didn't mention any of the activist people that I work with because we didn't get into that portion of it. But
well, we can do that for the next time. But
that's what I was gonna say. So there's the Opioid Spoon Project, which
I know I loved when I saw that there. And so if you want to, let's say maybe like 6 weeks down the road or something, to put something together with them, and then we can have them on too with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that cool, Meech, with you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And there's also there's a couple others that were this realm. I don't know if she would do it, but Nan Golden, who's a world-known art photographer.
Okay.
She's the one who went into the museums and had them take the Sackler name down, or she did the actions where we went into the Guggenheim and just dropped like prescription papers down and rolled our banners and marched down to the Met where we on the steps had a rally. The opioid spoon, you saw the honor spoon where people were signing it, but the original opioid spoon was dropped in front of Purdue Pharma as a protest.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And he's done, so we've done Purdue, Johnson & Johnson, the FDA. There's more. DC. I had to figure out where we were. Rhodes Pharmaceuticals in Rhode Island, which is Sackler / Purdue's. That's their off-brand, generic drugs. So that's there. So there's a lot going